Hi everybody, I'm Pia from Stitches and Scraps. Today I'm going to show you how to knit the Resilience Rising hat. This video goes along with a full written pattern and a chart. I'll be referencing the chart throughout the video. You can find the link to the pattern and chart in the description on this video if you're watching it on YouTube, or directly in the blog post if you're watching it on my blog. I'll be using Cascade Cantata yarns, which Cascade did provide for free for this design. For my main color, I've got the hand paint version in the colorway Morning Light, and then the solid version or tonal or heathered version in the color Maroon is my contrast color. We're going to start with an alternating cable, or sometimes called seed stitch, cast on. What this is a cable cast on that alternates between knit and purl stitches. So we're going to start with a slip knot, and that's going to eventually count as our first purl for the cast on. And the first stitch of our row of our cast on round is going to be a knit stitch. So I'm going to do this just like I would for a knitted cast on. I'm just going to knit that stitch that I just put on my needle. And now to put this stitch back on the left needle, I'm going to come in knitwise. So from behind and through, okay? Not this way, not straight on, but from behind and through. And that will make sure it's oriented correctly on the needle and not twisted. Now here's where it gets fun. A cable cast on, instead of going into the stitch itself, we're going to be going between the two stitches, okay? But this was a purl, this was a knit. I want to do a purl for the next stitch, so I'm going to go purlwise between these two stitches. Yarn over and pull it through, okay? And that is your first purl. Now purls can go on straight because they're already kind of twisty, and so they're already in the right orientation. Okay, so now the next stitch is a knit. I go between the two stitches and knit it. Go between the two stitches to purl. Whoops. And between the two stitches to knit. And you're going to just keep doing this until you have enough stitches cast on. Now if you lose count, remember that every odd number stitch is going to be a purl and every even number stitch is going to be a knit. You can go purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, and then you know what you've done last, so you know what to do next. I'm going to only cast on 20 stitches for this swatch. You're going to cast on a different even number of stitches depending on the size you're making. So I'll meet you back after I've cast on 20 stitches. Okay, I've cast on my 20 stitches, and now looking at it from this side, it goes purl, knit, etc., starting with a purl, ending with a knit. When we turn to work in the round, we're going to be working on this side. So that's going to alternate, and the slip stitch becomes a knit, and then purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. So our first stitch is going to be a knit stitch into that slip stitch. Now if you're working the hat, you'll have enough stitches to use maybe a 16-inch needle and just keep going in the round. For the baby size, you might need to magic loop. For my sample, I definitely need to magic loop, so I'm going to show you how to do that. Otherwise, you won't need to do this again until you reach the crown. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 is half of my stitches. I'm going to separate that, and I'm going to push my cable through that space and form a loop. Okay, and I'm going to pull this all the way until my needle comes up into those stitches there. Okay, so now I've kind of folded my work in half. I'm making sure nothing's twisted. I don't see the bottoms of any stitches. I only see the tops of the stitches. And everything's arranged nicely. Now I can pull this needle out and then start working over here, which is where my slip knot is. So now I've got a loop there and a loop here. Loop there, loop here. That's your magic loop. Okay, so I knit the first stitch into that slip knot. And then I purl the next stitch right there. And I'm doing my first couple stitches tightly because of the magic loop. There's a tendency to have extra yarn here. So doing it tightly keeps that from forming a ladder. The rest of the stitches I'm going to do at a normal tension. So that was a knit and a purl. So next I have a knit and then a purl, knit, purl. I'm just going to go to the end of this needle so that you can see what the magic loop looks like. If you're not doing a magic loop, just keep going all the way around. Okay, again, I'm doing this one kind of tightly because I'm right up against that magic loop. There we go, nice and tight on this stitch. And now I've hit the end of the magic loop, so I'm going to pull this cord through until that needle comes out. And then I'm going to turn to continue working around this needle. Okay, so I've just sort of rotated, and now I'm working into this needle here. So my last stitch was a purl. This one should be a knit. I'm going to pull that stitch nice and tight and then knit this one, and that should take care of any laddering over there. And then purl and knit all the way across, alternating knits and purls. Now the last two stitches will tend, just on the cast on, will tend to be really overlapping. Make sure you separate them so you don't miss a stitch here. Okay, so that's a knit, and then my last stitch will be a purl. And that is that. So looking at my finished row, you can see the alternating knits and purls going all the way around. You're going to do 8, 10, or 12 rounds like that, depending on which size you're making. I'm just going to do a couple more rounds and then we'll go on to the increase round. I've finished just 3 rounds of this ribbing, and you can really see how that cast on is almost invisible because it just blends right into the ribbing pattern. So it just looks like it continues all the way around with no break. And that's what we're going for with that alternating cable cast on. So let's move on to the increase round. On the increase round, we're going to get up to our total number of stitches for the body of the hat, which will be a multiple of 8. Now you're going to have a different number for each size, so you're going to do a different number of increases for each size, and you'll have a different number of stitches between increases for each size. For this sample, I'm going to increase 4 stitches to get me up to 24. So I'm going to do an increase every 5 stitches. So I'll knit 4 and then I'll do an increase in the 5th stitch. Your number of stitches you're going to knit between increases will be different, so follow the pattern for that. But I am going to start by knitting 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the increase we're doing here is a knit front and back increase. So that means I knit through the front leg of the stitch, and then I knit through the back leg of the stitch. And that makes a purl bump where we knit through the back leg, but because we're doing this right on top of ribbing, it's really not very noticeable. So that's why this is a nice easy increase, and it blends in very well right here. So I have now knit into 5 stitches, but I've got 6 stitches on my needle. So I'm going to do that 4 more times. So knit 1, or 3 more times. 2, 3, 4, and your number of repeats will be different too, depending on how many stitches you need to add. Okay, so knit front and knit back. And that adds an extra stitch. So I will do that on my other side and then come back. Okay, I am up to my correct number of stitches now, and we're ready to move on to the body. For your hat, you will be switching to larger needles at this point before you start the body, but for this sample, I've just used the same needles throughout. And this is why we needed a multiple of 8 stitches, because this repeat right here is 8 stitches wide. So let's start at round 1. We're going to knit 1, and then slip 3 with the yarn in front. Okay, so the yarn is in front when we slip each of these 3. That's going to make a long float across these 3 stitches on the front of our work. And then we knit 1, slip 3 with yarn in front, knit 1. Repeat that all the way across, and you're going to end with 7 more stitches here where you slip 3, knit 1, slip 3, and that brings you back around. So let's do that. We're going to knit our first stitch and then bring the yarn to the front and slip 1, 2, 3 stitches with the yarn in front. And then bring the yarn to the back again. Now make this float nice and big. Make sure it's not tight at all. It should be nice and loose like that, okay? And we knit 1. And you can even pull on this a little bit right now to adjust the float a little bit because you want a lot of room there. You want it nice and floppy. Okay, bring the yarn to the front, slip 3. And now here's a trick. If you want, you can slip all 3 together like that if you find that easier. Or you can go 1, 2, 3 and slip them separately. But make sure you spread them out when they get to that needle. Make a nice long float and knit 1. Your floats should look a little floppy at this point, okay? So bring it to the front, slip 1, 2, 3. I'm going to adjust my needles to the back again, make sure my float is nice and big, and knit 1. Okay, and I'm actually going to change where I have my magic loop so that the knit 1 falls at the end of that needle so that I don't have that weirdness over the gap there. Okay, now I bring my yarn to the front and I slip 3, 1, 2, 3, bring it to the back, knit 1. And I'm going to keep doing that. 2, 3, bring it to the back, knit 1. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm far enough away from the beginning of my round, like from the tail here, that I feel like I need a beginning of round marker to make sure I know where the beginning of my round is. I generally don't need it right at the beginning for the ribbing because I can follow where the tail is, but now I feel like I want it. You can, of course, put it in earlier during the ribbing and everything. Okay. So now we're on to round 2, and you see we've got these floats here, and that's what we want to see. Round 2 is where we introduce our second color, but we introduce it with a slip stitch. So that slip stitch is going to be slipping this first stitch in this color, and then we start knitting with the second color. So let's slip this first stitch first, and I'm just going to drop this yarn. I'm just leaving it here, and I'll pick it up again when I need it later. Okay, now I'm going to bring in my contrast color. I'm going to make a nice little loop of it, insert my needle into the next stitch to knit, place this loop on my needle and pull it through to knit that stitch. Okay, now let's look at the pattern on row 2. Row 2, 3, and 4 are all slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, knit 3. Notice the one we're slipping is the one that we knit last time, okay? And now notice these slips do not have a bar in front of them. That's because we're slipping them with the yarn at the back. So the yarn is going to be hidden on these slip stitches, okay? We're not making floats at the front anymore. So slip 1, knit 3, all the way around for rounds 2, 3, and 4. So I've slipped 1, I've knit 1 to join my yarn, and then making sure I'm not using my tail, I'm going to knit 2 and 3, okay? And then I slip this one with the yarn in the back so that it's hidden, and knit 3. Slip 1, knit 3. I'm going to keep doing that all the way around for 3 rounds, rounds 2, 3, and 4. When I get to round 5, I'm going to do it all the way around to the last stitch. So I'm actually going to finish rounds 2, 3, 4, and most of 5, and I'll meet you back here near that last stitch. Now I'm at the end of round 2, and one thing I wanted to note is make sure, remember that this yarn that we dropped is actually forming a float over here. So make sure it's not like this in the front. You want to make sure that yarn is dropped at the back so that it forms that last float. Okay, now I'm going to continue knitting around rounds 2, 3, and 4, and most of 5, and I'll meet you back at the end of round 5. I've come to the last stitch of round 5, which I need to knit in my main color. So my main color is right back here where I dropped it, and you can see that it's a few stitches ahead, right? Like here's my current yarn, and then it's the main color is right over there, right? So it's going to leave a little bit of a diagonal float when I do this, but I'm going to pick it up from underneath my current color, and that's going to make them cross, which will tie those floats in place and make sure there's no gap here. Okay, so I pick this up and leave the floats nice and loose back there. You don't want any tightness, and they'll be hidden inside the hat. So I pick up the main color and I knit the next stitch. Okay, and that is the end of that round. Now, why are we knitting this stitch in the main color? Well, that's because the pattern is about to shift, and we want to make sure that when we slip this stitch here, that we're slipping a stitch of the main color. So that's why, and you'll see that come together as we do this next round. This next round is the fun round, because this is where we get to trap those floats that we have down here. Okay, we're going to knit our stitch up here together with that float. So let's do that. We're going to start with 2 knit stitches. So, oh, and you may want to untangle your yarn at this point, because crossing it will make it tangle. Okay, now I've dropped my other yarn to the back of the work, and now I'm working with the main color yarn. And I'm going to knit 2. Knit 1, knit 2. And don't worry that that's floppy, because that's going to be less floppy in a minute. So the next stitch is a knit with float. And what that means is I'm going to put my needle down into this float, okay, from front to back. I'm going to pick up the float, and then I'm going to knit this stitch with the float. So I knit the stitch and I pull it through the stitch and the float together. And that's going to lock that float in and make that lovely diamond shape. Now I knit 3 and knit with float. Knit 3, knit with float. All the way around, that's what I'm going to be doing. So knit 3, and you can see the knit with float ends up being the center stitch of that 3-stitch group from before. So pick up the float and knit this stitch with that float. Okay? Knit 3, and knit with float, and I'm going to do that all the way around. Okay, I've come to my last repeat, and I'm ready to do this last knit with float. And if you'll notice, the next stitch after that is the white stitch, the main color stitch that we did right here, and that's because we need to slip that stitch instead of knitting it. So I've knit 3, I'm going to knit this one with the float, and now I'm starting my series of floats for the next round, and those are going to be staggered. So it's going to be this stitch and the next 2 stitches that are going to be the 3 stitches that the float covers. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my yarn to the front and slip this stitch. Okay, shift, shift, shift. I lost my stitch marker at some point for beginning of round. It fell out. You should keep one in there if you want to, or unless you feel pretty confident telling where the beginning of the round is. Okay, so I slipped 1 at the end of the last round, and I'm going to go ahead and slip 2 more, and that gives me a 3-stitch float. Make that float nice and loose. Okay, so there is my 3-stitch float. So there's the one that I skipped or slipped on the first round, or on the previous round, and then the 2 that I slipped on this round, on round 7. And now the remaining pattern is knit 1, slip 3 with yarn in front, knit 1, slip 3 with yarn in front. It's the same thing we did down here, it's just staggered so that it lines up opposite where we had it down here. So slip 3, knit 1, bring the yarn to the front, slip 3, make sure my float's nice and big, knit 1. Now when you come to your last stitch here, remember we've been shifting this row by 1 stitch, so we're going to keep doing that here, and we're going to knit that one in the contrast color. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my contrast color, which I had dropped to the back. I want to make sure to pick it up from behind this current yarn so that it crosses. And I knit this last stitch. Next round, we've already knit one, so we're going to knit 2 more and then slip 1. Knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1. The same pattern we did down here for 2, 3, and 4. We're going to do here for 8, 9, 10, and 11 all the way to the end this time. We don't need to do the little jog at the end. So I'm going to knit 2 because I've already knit 1. So knit 2 and slip 1. And that one that you're slipping is where we locked the float before. Knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, and just keep doing that all the way around for the next several rows, and I will come back to you at the end of round 11. Okay, I've come to the end of round 11. I ended with a slip 1 and a knit 1. So there's my slip 1 and my knit 1, and I'm ready to change colors again. So I'm going to pick up the main color from behind the contrast color and drop the contrast color to the back. Now for round 12, we're doing the knit with floats again. We're starting with it this time though. Last time it was in the middle here. This time it's on the very first stitch. So it's going to be knit with float, knit 3, knit with float, knit 3, knit with float, knit 3, all the way around. So let's do that. We've done this already. It's just staggered now a little bit, that's all. So find that very first float right down here, stick your needle through it and into the first stitch, grab that main color yarn and knit through the stitch and through the float, and then knit 3. And then grab the next float and knit it with the next stitch. Okay. And then knit 3. And keep doing that all the way around. I've finished round 12 and you can see how our lovely lattice pattern is forming. Now you're going to repeat rounds 1 through 12. So see how the next round is exactly the same here as round 1. You're going to repeat rounds 1 through 12 for the number of times that it says for your size that you're making. I want to show you on the finished hat what that little jog down here does for us and why we do that. This is, let's see if I can find it now. There it is. I made a little notch so I would remember. This is the beginning of the row or beginning of the round on the finished hat. Right here is where we made that little jog. So this is my very first stitch of the round. And you can sort of see where it's slightly different, especially right in here where I got it a little bit loose. But for the most part, it blends in really seamlessly in a spiral. Like here, you can see that little jog there. But that is where we made the slight change here so that it blends in kind of a spiral instead of having a distinct jog where the lines break here. And that is the purpose of this little bit here, is to fix that jog. So that, oh, let me show you on the inside. I want to show you how the floats look. This is how the floats look as you're carrying those colors up, and you can see where they twist over each other every time you change colors. Now I'm going to switch to my full-size sample to show you the rest of this, which is the crown. This is the body. We've just finished the body, which is these repeats of rows 1 through 12, and then we'll shift over to the main full-size sample to show you the crown. I've switched to a adult size hat to show you the crown, and let's take a look at where we are in the pattern. I've just finished this repeat of row 2, and we're going to start with row 3. Row 3 starts out very much like row 2. You slip one, you knit one, right? Slip one with yarn and back, and then knit one. But then we're going to do a decrease. Here are your 3 contrast color stitches. We're going to decrease the last 2 of them. We're going to knit 2 together over the last 2 of them. And that takes away 1 stitch. So you have here this black box that means there's no stitch there anymore. So these 2 have now become 1. So we're going to knit 2 together. Then we slip that same slip stitch from before, right? And then we want to decrease that angles the other way. So we're going to slip, slip, knit in these first 2. So on either side of this slipped stitch, we're going to do a decrease this way and then a decrease that way. So let's do just that much, because then after that you just knit 1 and slip 1. So let's get through this repeat here, and then we'll come back and look at the chart again. I start out by slipping the marker and then slipping that first stitch. And then I'm going to knit this stitch, and remember I'm using my contrast color for this round, so I'm going to knit this stitch, and then I'm going to knit 2 together in these 2 stitches. Now I've come to my slip stitch again, so I'm just going to slip it, and now see there's only 2 stitches between these 2 slip stitches. And now on this side of it, I want a decrease that leans the other way, so I'm going to slip 1. This is a slip, slip, knit. I'm going to slip 1 knitwise so it twists. Slip the next one knitwise so it twists. Put my left hand needle back into those 2 stitches. And now you see I'm all set up to knit into them, so I'm going to knit them together. And that makes them twist and makes it lean to the left. Okay, now I'm going to knit this one and slip this one. And that finishes my repeat here. This is my 8-stitch repeat. So it was knit 1, knit 2 together, slip 1, slip, slip, knit. Knit 1 and slip 1. So let's do that all again. So you can see what's happening is on either side of this slip stitch in the repeat, you're decreasing 1 stitch in each direction. So let's do that again. We're going to knit 1, knit 2 together, slip 1 with the yarn in the back, slip, slip, knit, knit 1, and slip 1. And you're going to keep doing that all the way around, and you'll end up, instead of having 3 stitches between each of your slip stitches, you'll end up with 2 stitches between each of your slip stitches. And that's how we do our first round of decreases. Now that is the same for all sizes. This is an 8-stitch repeat, and each size has more or fewer of the repeats. So for every 8-stitch repeat that you have, you'll be decreasing 2 stitches away. Okay, so I'll finish those repeats and then we'll come back here when I'm at the last 7 stitches. Okay, I've reached my last repeat. I have slipped that last stitch right there in that repeat, right there, and I'm ready to do the last 7 stitches. So for the last 7 stitches, it's the same thing as this. It's just that you don't have the last slipped stitch at the end there. So again, it is knit 1, knit 2 together, slip 1 with yarn in back, slip, slip, knit, knit 1. So let's look at that. Knit 1, knit 2 together, slip 1 with yarn in back, slip, slip, knit, and knit the last one. And that brings us to the end of our round. So that was round 3 of the crown. Moving on to round 4. Round 4 is just a normal round where you slip the slipped stitches and you knit the knit stitches. It's just that now there's only 2 in between each slip stitch. So you slip the slip stitch and then you knit 2 and then slip another stitch. So let's do that. So slip that marker, slip the first stitch, and now there's only 2 stitches to knit in between, so I knit both of those 2. And then I slip the next stitch. And I keep doing that all the way around. I'll meet you back at the end of the round. Okay, I am coming to the end of the round here. I've got 2 more to knit. And I'm at the end of the round and ready to start on round 5. For round 3, we took this group of 3 stitches and turned it into 2 stitches, right? So every group of 3 stitches became a group of 2 stitches. Now in round 5, we're going to take these groups of 2 stitches and turn them into 1 stitch. So we're going to slip 1 and then do a decrease. Slip 1, do a decrease. That's the repeat. And we're alternating between a knit 2 together and a slip slip knit. So you slip the first stitch, and then our repeating previously 8 stitch pattern, now is going to be a 4 stitch pattern, is knit 2 together, slip 1, slip slip knit, slip 1. Okay, and you repeat that all the way across. Now when we get to the last 7 stitches, we're again doing the knit 2 together, slip 1, and slip slip knit, but notice that the slip slip knit is in the main color. So make sure to make that color change before you do that slip slip knit. Let's take a look at that. Start by slipping the marker and that first stitch. And then we're going to do a knit 2 together. Our first decrease is a knit 2 together. Then I slip 1, and now I just did a knit 2 together, so that means here I'm doing a slip slip knit. So slip, slip, knit. Slip 1, knit 2 together. Slip 1, slip, slip, knit. Slip 1, knit 2 together. Slip 1, slip, slip, knit. And I'm going to keep doing that all the way around. Now it's starting to get a little tight on my cord, so at this point I'm probably going to start doing a magic loop or a traveling loop so that I'm not stretching my stitches so much. So that whenever you feel like it's getting tight, go ahead and do that so that your stitches aren't being stretched and they can be nice and relaxed. Okay, I'm nearing the end of the row. I've slipped 1, I'm knitting 2 together, slip 1, and then this slip slip knit, this needs to be done with the main color. So I'm going to drop this color. I'm going to pick up the main color from behind so that it twists, and then I'm going to slip, slip, and knit with the main color. Now that is the end of round 5, and we're ready to knit round 6 with the main color. The reason that we did that again, that last stitch in this color, is again so that that slip stitch will be the right color. There is a mistake in the chart here. I actually changed the way that I worked the last 2 stitches. Instead of locking the float down in the second to last stitch and then slipping the last stitch, I ended up locking the float down while slipping the last stitch. And you'll see that change as we go forward through this row. Round 6, now we're doing that round where we're locking our floats down, where we're working through the floats. So I'm going to knit the slipped stitch. Then I only have 1 stitch in the middle, so I'm going to use that stitch to lock down that float, knit with the float in that stitch. Then I knit the slipped stitch and again knit with the float where I have the stitches between the slip stitch. So that's going to be the whole round all the way around. So until we get to this last stitch, which we're going to slip. So I'm going to slip my marker, knit the first stitch. I'm going to knit this stitch, but I want to do it through the float. Now the float's not going to be quite as recognizable anymore because it's not crossing over as many stitches, but it is there. So stick your needle through that float from front to back and then knit the stitch behind it and pull that loop all the way through. Okay, then I'm going to knit the slip stitch and I'm going to adjust my little loop here. Let's pull it out way back here somewhere. About halfway between where I am and all the way around. Okay, and then here's another float. I'm going to pick up that float and knit it with this stitch here. And we're just going to keep doing that all the way around. Knit the slipped stitches, pick up the float, and knit it with the stitch in between. I'm nearly to the end. I'm going to knit this one stitch, and then I'm at my last stitch here. Now at this last stitch here, to set us up for the next row, I want to slip it, but I also need to lock down this float. So I'm going to slip this stitch through the float. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to put my needle through the float, slip the stitch, and pull it out through the float, just like that. Okay, now that's locked in there, and I've slipped it, and I'm ready to start the next round. For round 7, we're going to slip 2 stitches and then knit 1, slip 3 stitches and knit 1. And we're going to keep doing that all the way around till we get to the very last stitch, which we're going to knit in the other color. I've just slipped that one. My yarn is in front for the float, and I'm going to slip the stitch marker and then 2 more stitches. So now I have a float that's 3 stitches wide, right? So now I bring that to the back and keep it nice and loose, and I'm going to knit the next stitch. Bring it to the front again and slip 1, 2, 3, bring it to the back and knit the next stitch. Okay, I've slipped 3 stitches. I'm bringing the yarn to the back. I have 2 stitches left in this round. I'm going to knit this one. And then when I come to the last stitch, I'm going to drop this color. I'm going to pick up the contrast color from behind this one, and I'm going to knit this stitch. Okay, and I'm ready to start the next round. We're going to start by knitting 2, then we slip 1, and that slipped one is the one that we knit before. Okay, so we knit these 2 slip stitches, we slip 1, and then we knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, all the way around to the end. And at the end, we'll end up with 1 knit stitch after that last slip. So let's do that. Knit 2. That covers the 3 stitches behind our float there. So I'm going to slip the previously knit stitch and then knit 3 and slip 1, knit 3 and slip 1. I've come to the end of my round. I've got 1 more stitch to slip, 1 more stitch to knit, and that is the end of my round. Now the next round is entirely decreases. We're just going to alternate between knit 2 together and slip, slip, knit. All the way around. That's it. We're not worrying about our slip stitches, nothing. This is just a solid row or round, of the contrast color where we knit 2 together and slip, slip, knit. Knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit. Knit 2 together. And I'm at my last slip, slip, knit. And that's a little bit loose there because it's attached to this loose thread of the main color still. Okay, now I'm going to drop this color. You could fasten it off. I'm just going to wait till the end. And I'm going to pick up the main color from behind this one. And that just closes the gap again. Okay, and we've got 1 round left to do. And in this round, we're going to be picking up all of these floats that are all the way around. So in every stitch until the very last stitch, we're going to be picking up a float. But we also want to do a decrease because we have 2 stitches here for each repeat. So the first stitch, we're going to be picking up the float because the first decrease would actually be these 2 stitches together, which we're not going to bother trying to do. So in the first stitch, we're going to pick up a float. And then in every other pair of stitches all the way across, we're going to do a knit 2 together while picking up the float. And then in the last stitch, we just knit it. So let me show you that. So I'm slipping my marker, and in the first stitch, I'm just going to pick up this float that's right here. And I will knit, oops, caught my tail there. I will knit this stitch through the float. Okay, now for all the rest of the stitches around to the last one, I'm going to pick up this float and knit 2 together. And when I knit 2 together, I pull it through the float. Okay, so now I've got 2 more here. I pick up this float and I knit 2 together. Okay, pick up the float, knit 2 together. And I'm just going to keep doing that all the way around. Now when I get to the very last stitch here, there's no more floats to pick up because I just picked up that one right there, and there's nothing to knit it together with. I suppose I could knit it together with that one if I wanted to, but there's no reason to. It's one stitch. So I'm just going to knit it, remove my marker, and that is the top of the hat done. Now let's fasten off and sew the top of this hat closed. So I'm going to grab both of my yarns because I'm going to pull both yarns through. I like having the double strand. And I'm going to cut maybe a 6 to 12 inch, somewhere in that range, 8-inch tail, long enough to go around the top of the hat and then to duplicate stitch for a bit to weave it in. I'm going to thread this on a tapestry needle, both strands together. Okay, I have both strands on my tapestry needle, and now I'm going to just shove this needle back to the beginning here. And I'm going to go through every single one of these stitches with my tapestry needle and take it off of this needle here, off of the knitting needle. And count to make sure you have enough. For this one, I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think that's 2 there, 9, 10 stitches. And is that correct? There's 8 repeats, so that is 8, 9, and 10 stitches. So that is correct. And I'm going to just pull the tail through all of those stitches. Make sure I tighten up that last stitch there so that there's no big gap. Pull it nice and tight, and that'll close the top of the hat. Now I can bring these tails down to the inside through that center hole and weave in the ends on the inside. And that's how you make the Resilience Rising hat. You can finish it off with a pom-pom if you want to, or just leave it just the way it is. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends, or leave me a comment. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great videos. Thanks for watching.